大家好，今天我们有幸来到世界知名的学府哈佛大学医学院，来进行我们这场案例的制作。那么这场案例的话呢，我们请到了精准医学领域的专家 Professor Gil Alterovitz 跟我们做一趟访谈。通过跟他的访谈的话呢，大家可以了解到，在这个大家都非常热的这个领域里面，这个精准医疗这个领域里面的话呢，这个数据是怎么发挥作用的。So Gil, in this precision medicine era, people talk about the importance of standardization. So in this field, medical field, people know this HL7. So how the HL7 can play an important role in this precision medicine era?
Right. So precision medicine is really all about the patient. So how do you bring a lot of different data sources to give you information specifically about that patient? So to be able to get information from different sources like the electronic medical record to and from that record and other sources, what you need to do is have a standard to communicate that information. That's what the HL7 and FHIR standards really provide you, a way to communicate information so that you can get all that information about the patient into and out of the electronic medical record.
So Gil, in this new era of data abundance, one kind of data is very important. That's genomic data. So how do we use genomic data in this standard body HL7 score? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. So in precision medicine, one of the things that we're looking at is about how do you get information specifically about that patient, and genomic information is really a key part of that, so that you can get information about that patient's past and future. It inherently includes information about family history and so forth. And so what you need to do is to get that into the electronic medical record where you can, and or communicate that information from other data sources that may be sequencing labs in other locations. And so FHIR Genomics is this emerging standard now that allows people to do that, and to communicate that information in a way that you can both have sequence-based information about genetics, as well as genetic panels, individual genetic tests, and to communicate and store that information for later analysis.
So that is very interesting how the FHIR is work out for the genomic data. But what kind of application can we build on top of this framework? Do you have some suggestions?
Right, certainly. So it sounds like you're talking about Smart on FHIR, which is really all about creating apps that build on top of the FHIR standard for communicating information. So it's one thing to communicate information from one place to another, and that's kind of like having, files that you might have on your computer. But to actually do productive work, you need apps and applications that actually build on top of that and allow you to do clinical decision making, putting together that information about genetics, that information about images and other clinical information to make decisions about your patient and how you might care for them. So that will, enable precision medicine in that respect for your patient. And so FHIR Genomics allows you to communicate that information, and Smart on FHIR Genomics provides you those tools and standards that allow you to build apps that allow you to do clinical decision support, work with privacy, security, authentication, authorization, and data sharing, and other issues that come up when you're trying to build applications to actually do precision medicine in practice.
So going back to the SMART, so from what I understand, this is all about collaboration. So this platform allows different kind of institutes, also different individuals can contribute and work together to solve a particular problem. Is that the case?
Yeah, so Smart on FHIR really allows apps that can talk to a number of different resources, right? So it could be electronic medical records at one institution, but then you may want to compare that data with other types of data. So an example might be the precision cancer medicine application or the genomics advisor, where you take data for your actual patient in terms of the genetic, the clinical data, and then you see how your patient is similar or different to other patients that that may have a similar condition. So maybe it's a particular cancer phenotype, and you want to see if your patient is similar or different to a larger population by comparing your patient to these others in terms of the others' genetic and clinical data, and then seeing how that may affect your diagnosis and your prognosis information and which drugs you might want to use for your patient compared to how these different approaches have worked for other patients in the past. So you can do that type of analysis using Smart on Fire genomics applications.
So it's very good that you're talking about a drug. How this data come into the picture to help people to do the drug discovery?
So drug discovery is really an interesting area that there's been a lot of work that's been going on. In the past, people have really looked at screening randomly for drugs. You have a big library and you look for different drugs that can come out of that. And then recently, people have started looking at how can you actually design drugs based on their properties, both in the computer and then also through wet lab testing. One thing that our lab has actually been focused on is one particular area of looking at disordered proteins and their interactions. So some proteins, it turns out, are really flexible and they have these disordered regions, and they have other proteins that they interact with. And what we're working on is developing drugs that can act like these and actually interact and actually serve as a drug that will interact with these regions, and in doing so can present potential new therapeutics. In fact, we've actually been working with once we've done some predictions, we've actually been working in collaboration with the Chinese Academy of Sciences and actually validating a few compounds against drug-resistant tuberculosis. And then once we've done that, the next step is really to see how that can be translated into actual care for precision medicine, and it's really useful in that in precision medicine you can actually take your patient, look at the actual samples of TB that came from that patient and see which type of drug resistance they have, and then based on that you can design and use one of these therapeutics that are suitable specifically for that patient. That's really the vision of precision medicine.
So Gil, as an expert, how do you suggest that a student with an engineer background get started in the precision medicine field?
Yeah, that's a good question. My background was in engineering. Before I really got into bioinformatics, I did electrical and computer engineering as my undergraduate, and so I kind of understand this notion of how it can be challenging to learn, and I'll tell you about how I kind of went about it and some resources that might be useful. I think the first thing is to really learn and understand how someone in precision medicine might think. What are the problems and the use cases that exist? And the best way to do that is to actually find a potential research group that has actual cases and potentially work with physicians or researchers that are working with these actual problems right now, and then you'll be able to see which problems you can deal with, and then the programs and the code that you'll write or the methods that you'll design will be useful for actual cases, and you'll see which new cases may need that. The other thing is, you can kind of read about just the general area. I talked before a little bit about some of the drug development work and how you want to integrate different data sources. There are issues about security and so forth that Smart on Fire dealt with. There are issues about machine learning, clinical decision support, and all of them are contain computational issues. And so there are a number of books out there. The one that we're using in a couple of our classes in biomedical computing over at MIT and Harvard is this one called Systems Bioinformatics, which I was actually involved in writing, and which has recently been translated into Chinese in collaboration with a university here in China. And one of the aspects that this deals with is how do you integrate data? Another one is what are the relationships between data sources, and actually gives you different use cases that you can do for those. And then it goes into, for example, Bayesian networks and machine learning and a number of different areas. So for each of the technical areas, you can see and learn what would be a potential application area. So I would recommend, this is just one book. There are a number of different books out there, but try and find one that you feel comfortable with that was written for an engineering perspective. I mean, this one we call an engineering case-based approach because it's kind of geared toward people with this technical background. So I would recommend that approach so that they can teach the biology and those aspects with the knowledge that you have about whether it be circuits or computer science abstraction concepts, so that it'll be easy to follow and go from there.
So what you described is for the student with engineer background, but for the student with the medical or school public health background, how do they get into this exciting field? Do you have any suggestions?
Right. So I think for people in a medical background and that are interested in precision medicine, I think it's really about learning about the different types of use cases that there are. And then understanding and seeing which tools are available currently, and potentially working with with programmers or learning programming themselves. For example, through a programming boot camp or a 2-week really intensive course, potentially using some of the online tools like Code Academy and others that are out there, and potentially also reading books that are in this area. And also working with labs that have some of this new data. So finding a research group where you can actually find data that could be useful for precision medicine that integrates from different sources can allow you to see how what kind of problems there are in this field that you can address, and so that you can learn more about how you can influence and affect precision medicine for the future.
Thank you so much. 所以刚才大家听到了 Professor Gil Utterwitz 呢，给大家宏观上讲了一下精准医疗这个领域以及呢数据和数据科学在这个领域会发生的作用。那么我听了以后的话呢，我觉得最重要的一个概念是这个 collaboration 是协同，无论从标准的制作还是平台的建设，都是为了便于这个协同来开展的。那么在这个平台之上的话呢，才会有更多非常有用的 application app 去得到开发。那么我们今天的话呢，这是我们第一次在这个哈佛大学医学院现场来制作这个案例，希望呢这个案例能对大家有所帮助。